Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial entrepreneur with 30 companies under my belt. 20 of those failed and 10 I scaled to success. And I turned that roller coaster into a book called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is my life story of my ventures, how I've learned through failure, how I have used custom software development as a key differentiator of scaling and being successful at businesses. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We are a nearshore software development company. We help other companies build their enterprise software. And today I am joined by Chris Davis, who we're going to have some fun today. Chris is a CTO, a professor, an author, currently teaches at University of Texas. Chris, welcome. You bet. Chris, take our listeners through the journey of your career.
So I've been in tech probably about 30 years professionally, but it goes back to childhood. My father was a computer scientist. So when I was a kid, he took me to...
blood.
I'm sorry?
So it's in your blood.
Yes. He took me to when I was in elementary school. He would take me, take your kid to work day, and I would go to mainframes. And I taught myself how to program in a couple different languages. So here's this 8-year-old Chris, with punch cards in those days, writing Fortran code. So it started young. But then I got sidetracked early in life when I had a music career, and I did tech for a hobby. And so I did music for a while, but tech kept drawing me back in. And it got to that place where I wanted to settle down and have more of a stable career. And so I started working in telecom to start out with, because I had experience through my audio background of processing multi-channels, multiple calls via computer and on switching networks, but at low fidelity in telecom, whereas recording studios are a fewer number of channels at high fidelity, but a lot of the technology is the same. So I started out in telecom, and then from there, I went over to Texas Instruments, and I was there for almost 9 years. And then
Are they still around? They were such a big name way back when. Are they still around?
They are. And actually, they're around in a very big way. They're just doing some things that are, kind of fly under the radar. They have a sensors division that builds sensors, everything from tire pressure sensor for automotive industry. And they are the supplier to Ford Motors.
Interesting. You know, that when we were kids, that was such a common tech name you just heard all the time. So please continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. And then they've been focusing on embedded systems, so not trying to compete in the NVIDIA Intel space. And so they make a lot of
Intel
chips.
knows how to compete in that space right now.
Yeah, that is true. And so I worked on a project called OMAP. I was in middle management there. I was the global process and quality guy. I supported a team of 800, and I had directly reporting to me 15 people who were globally distributed, like 6 different time zones on 4 continents. And so that was a logistical issue, trying to get everybody, in all these different countries on the same page with so many different languages. But this project was building embedded systems. We worked on the first version of Android, the drivers for the chip, because we wanted to try to embed as much as possible on the chip so that we didn't have to layer the software after the fact. You get better performance when you have, some of the low level code that's actually baked into the silicon, so to speak. And so I did that. And then I was reaching a place where I was really interested in, the really geeky stuff. And I wanted to do more of the research, but I was finding there was kind of a glass ceiling without an advanced degree. And so I went back and worked on my PhD while I was still at Texas Instruments, and did both for a while. And then 2008 hit, and Texas Instruments was giving out early outs. So Chris exited, took the money and ran, and then and used it to accelerate to go full time, finish off my PhD. Then that's where I am now. And that after I got my doctorate, I worked for a lot of startups and doing some really cutting edge things. And many of those startups worked with the federal government. We did work with the intelligence community and the Pentagon, as well as private industry. And then while I was doing that for the first few years after getting my doctorate, the and having lots of fun, like I said, with cutting edge technology, the academia started drawing me back in. I got contacted, headhunted, and said, "How would you like to be a professor?" And so, the next thing I know, I'm a professor, but I still was doing my tech stuff on the side, right? And so that's what I've been doing since. And it was just a couple years after that, in 2012, that I founded my company, Noemiq. It's a tech consulting, and I also do fractional CTO work. I'm currently on my third CTO through that, and I also have a small staff that varies in size depending on the projects that we're taking on. And that's kind
Gotcha.
of where I am today. That's it in a nutshell.
So you're teaching computer science, you have a fractional CTO business. Let's talk about how students, computer science students lately, it's been my vantage point that the pandemic, when it hit, it's been a very bad thing for recent grads because all of a sudden everybody was remote, although remote in software is not that odd. But so if you weren't somebody with at least 5 years experience, to date, those people are still struggling to get jobs. What's your take and how do you advise your computer science students?
So I give a couple of different pieces of advice. One is that I tell my students that you should always be working on your own pet projects. Get yourself a GitHub account with a professional name. I tell them, don't use goofy handles for your account because you want to be able to put something on a resume, and look professional. I said, work on these projects. And then, unlike if you do an internship, you can say, "Oh, I did an internship at company XYZ," but then I can't show you my code because it's proprietary, right? But
Mhm.
if you have a GitHub, it's your code and you can choose, to share it. So potential employers can actually see the quality of the code that you're producing, and you can, give them code walkthroughs and things like that. So I tell them, find some pet project to develop or contribute to an open source project. And so that your fork, it might get folded back into the main line, with a bug fix or something. And again, these open source projects are things that you can put on a resume and say, "Hey,
Yes.
I contributed to," and then, some big name open source project. So that's code. Students typically, they don't write comments in their code. They don't have regression testing. They don't go, there's no software process. It's just
Mhm.
I write code, and once I compile it and it finally works, noodle with it, run it, noodle with it, run it. And then whenever it runs without falling apart, then you turn it in. That's not the way you ship production code, as you well know. And so I tell them, even though you might not be able to put your code in a resume, it still gives you real world experience with accountability and the discipline to write the comments and to build production quality bulletproof stuff.
So, what's the take these days in the university setting of using AI and teaching students to, especially computer science students on AI assisted tools?
So that went through a couple of different phases very quickly. Initially, the university infrastructure saw it as using AI was akin to plagiarism because AI was trained on other people's code. You're not learning how to code. But then it became evident that the use of many of these AI tools, I can't just describe in English and have it produce some code that meets those specifications. It's that sophisticated yet. It may be in the future, but right now you still have to understand when you're getting it to generate some code for you, you have to be able to look at it as a software engineer and understand what it's doing, so that if it's not doing exactly what you need, that you can modify it. And it's either going to be a jumping off point, like a springboard, like you might be stuck, kind of like writer's block. And a lot of times, those sorts of tools can be helpful. And so once the administration started to see that, one, that it has a role to play, and two, the fact that we were getting feedback from industry that we want coders, we want new graduates who know how to use these tools, because good coders married with good AI are working synergy together. It's not AI's doing it for me. AI's doing it with me.
Yes.
And the best role of that is thinking of it like a development process when you work in pairs with another coder. I don't know if you're familiar with some of those processes like Agile and
Absolutely.
yeah, I look at it that way. And I think the academia is coming to think of it that way. And so now we have a formal process. I'm on a committee at my university to find out how to formally incorporate these tools into the curriculum so that they're
How,
actually
with
part of the
the
learning objectives.
with the often what I'd imagine bureaucratic processes of academia. So has that started with students yet, or it's still trying to be figured out?
It's still trying to be figured out. And there's
Okay.
still students, who, because they don't have the guidance yet, the proper guidance from faculty and from the university, they're not using it in an effective way. And I'm seeing a lot of bad submissions for assignments, where they just describe something in English and whatever comes out, they just copy paste it and don't review it. And some of it is pretty horrendous. I'm sure that we've all seen the video of Will Smith eating spaghetti that, the AI gen produced. And some of the code is the programming equivalent of that video.
So I definitely agree with your statement that there was all this fear that AI was going to replace software engineers. And it's become clear that AI is a great assistant for software engineers. And I'm betting in my lifetime it doesn't replace software engineering. I do think it'll evolve it. And the common theme we hear right now is, as an engineer, you need to embrace AI and use it to be more productive, or you will be left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we kick the universities in the butt and make sure these college graduates have this experience?
I think most of the universities that have computer science program are already kicking themselves in the butt. They saw the writing on the wall. It took a year or two, but that's pretty fast turnaround time, for institutions that have so much tradition and history. Large
Yeah.
organizations don't move very quickly. And I think I might have mentioned to you offline, one of my motivations for working in my consulting company and working with startups, I like the agility and the fleetness of how fast small companies can move, that I was frequently frustrated working for a company with 50 to 100,000 employees that, major decisions took years, months, if not years. And so I think that given that my particular university has over 30,000 students, 30,000 plus another several thousand, like 2,000 faculty and 5,000 staff. It's a small city, right?
Right.
And so getting institution, and we're just one in the University of Texas systems here at UT Dallas. There are 16, 17 universities in the system. It kind of mirrors the University of California system where you have UC Irvine, UCLA, and so on.
Gotcha.
And so overall, we're talking a couple 100,000 students. So an organization that large, for it to turn on a dime and within 2 years have a formal process for incorporating AI into the curriculum, I would consider a very fast turnaround and react. I hate to use the word reaction because I don't think it was just a reaction, because we have a lot of pretty smart people. Most of the faculty, are scientists and have PhDs in computer science. So
Maybe they're too
they've been
smart.
through some of these revolutionary turns in the industry before.
So I know I'm seeing new grads, computer science grads, it can be challenging to get a role. I think all new grads in general, remote work, going back to, as me and you are a couple old guys, Chris, remote work used to be a privilege earned by
Yes.
being senior at what you do.
Hmm.
And I don't think remote work is good for young people. I think they need the office environment. They need to understand corporate politics. They need the networking. And the software engineers out of college I'm seeing get jobs are often on projects like government projects or ones that they're not allowed to use AI assisted tools. And I know I'm always advising those young engineers like, you need your side projects, your pet projects, you need to constantly be educating yourself on the AI assisted tools out there to make yourself a better engineer, even if you can't use it in your day job.
Mhm.
And what do you advise, your recent graduates and how to get roles and how to, especially in this critical time or challenging time for software engineers?
Well, one of the questions I've heard you ask some of your other guests is about what is a important lesson that I wish I'd learned earlier as a CTO. And early on, 15 years ago, when I first started doing this kind of consulting, the biggest technical problem that I had was never the code. The biggest technical problem was the people. And
Yes.
so early in my career, I used to obsess over things like the architecture and the tech stack and scalability and all of those things. But what actually derails projects is things like misaligned teams and unclear communication and egos and poor hiring decisions. And so I tell my students, I say, learn to work with other students on projects while you're still in school, and you can get things wrong without a whole lot of consequence, right? And so I know that undergraduates, well, my graduate students too, they hate team projects because everyone feels like they contribute the most and they're pulling the most weight, So you have a team of 4 students and they all
I
feel
get
like,
that in academia, but the real world, you're working with software teams.
yeah, I tell them, I said, once you graduate, you are never going to develop a product solo. It's just not going to happen. The
Right.
complexity of modern architecture is just beyond the scope of what you can do in even 100-hour week. Even if you live, breathe, eat, sleep. And I remember those days in the early days of the internet when we had rooms with cots when I worked at Nortel Networks. And I would literally be at work. You would go to the cafeteria in the morning and you'd see people in house coats and slippers
No.
at the company. So yeah, I tell them you're never going to have a project where you're doing everything of any consequence. You might build a little utility or something, but you got to learn how to work with people. You got to, and you're not going to do that through Zoom or, email or chat, texting. You have to be in the room with them. When it's time for lunch, go to lunch with your coworkers. I hate to go off on another tangent, but it's relevant to this point that I said one of the things, poor hiring decisions, because I was a hiring manager at Texas Instruments. And when I was looking at candidates, I would narrow it down to 2 or 3, usually from a pool of over 100. I would narrow it down to 2 or 3. And when I got there, I would take each of the 2 or 3 candidates out one at a time, not together, but take each one out with my team that they would be potentially working with. And I would sit back and watch the dynamic
I like
because
that. That's smart.
because I knew that if they got along, somebody would talk about their hobby. Oh, I went cycling this weekend, or whatever they did. Oh, baseball. Hey, I saw the Rangers play, and I would see these conversations, and I would know there's all the early signs of some kind of personal chemistry. Because when crunch time happens, you don't put in the extra hours and the extra effort because you were so enamored of your company. You do it for you don't want to let them down. And so
So
if you have
what's
that,
what's the key that you advise recent and upcoming graduates to getting a job?
so like I said, I encourage them when they're working on these projects that I describe, a GitHub project or some pet project, do it with other people. That's why I
Okay.
also said, find an open source project, because then there's other people that you're going to have to interact with, even if it's virtual. But better, find one of your coding buddies at the university and the two of you both work together to contribute to one of these open
Let's
sources.
start building your network while you're at the university and leverage that network when you graduate.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, you made it more concise than I did.
That's my job as a host. So, and that's, I don't care if you're fresh out of college or if you're an engineer with 10 years experience, it's a tough job market.
Hmm.
I know every job posting my company puts up, we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and it's hard to go through that process, and it's frustrating. And as you get to be C-level people, it's very rare in this day and age for somebody to actually get a job by applying on a LinkedIn job post or an Indeed job
Absolutely.
post. It's really about leveraging your network and having an inside track.
Yeah. Almost every one of my clients through Noemiq has been through my network. It's not because I have a website that people happen upon, right? Or, Google whatever it is that they need and then find my website and cold call me. That just doesn't happen. It's
So
there.
tell us about some cool projects. Thank you for sharing the university side. Tell us some cool projects you're working on with your company, Noemiq.
So right now, I'm working with a startup out of New York or New Jersey. It's on across the river, but it's called Neuralabs, and it's semantic search. And they have a couple of patents, both in the United States and in Japan, that promises to have some innovative ways to embed hyperlinks like you might see on Wikipedia whenever you're going through information, but to embed hyperlinks in real time. So I can open a document like a PDF and then click on words in the PDF, and it will take me to either other documents in my document management system, or it will take me to related websites. So
Gotcha.
one of the use cases I thought was cool was putting some classic literature in for training, because no copyrights attached to it, right? When it's open source, these old novels like Charles Dickens, and a novel about 19th century London. So understanding the context, being able to click on London, and it brings up a map of London, but in the 1880s, because it knew from context when this was set, and shows an appropriate context sensitive diagram. And so that kind of thing. So to
Gotcha.
me, that's exciting to see something innovative, and the fact that it's protected by patents, so there's more chance to get traction, as we're trying to get to B round funding and, that kind of stuff. And to contribute to actually make a difference. And that's something I didn't always feel I was doing in the big corporate America. Whenever you're a cog in a big machine, you don't, you know, I like to be able to say, especially when I was working on it, we worked on the very first version of Android back in like 2001, 2002, before it was a
Very
commercial
cool.
product. It wasn't even called Android yet. We were working just with code names, for projects. And we couldn't even say who we were working with. We had NDAs all over the place at that time, with the companies that people now are household names like Samsung, but weren't that big. This is back when Nokia dominated a telecom, right? And they were also a client. That's a whole other set of war stories, though, about the downfall of Nokia. They missed the boat when it came to the smartphone. But like I said, I like telling some of those stories. I was proud to be working on something innovative. And but once it became the mainstream, then you just get put back into the machine of cranking out the next version of the same old thing. And with these startups, it's like every project is something new and interesting, and that gives you the ooh ah factor whenever you tell people about it, and you see their eyes get wide and go, wow, that's possible.
As a serial entrepreneur, I understand and I get it. Chris, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. Love the fact that you have your real world experience. You're educating our future engineering teams. You also have your own consulting company. Great insight. Appreciate it. Before we wrap,
Yes.
what final advice do you have? I'm going to give you for both new upcoming students and graduates and tech leaders out there.
I would say for students, love what you do. I see too many students who are go into computer science because they see that's the hot job with the high salaries. And I tell them, if you don't love what you do, you won't write good code and you won't make that good money. People are pay for people who create value. It's not about
Yes.
just writing code. It's creating good code, creating something of value. And I said, if you don't love it, find something else to do.
And I think that advice works for new grads and for other tech leaders
Yeah.
out there. I don't know how. That's one of the things I talk about in my book, that if you don't love what you're doing and have a passion for it, there's only so much you can hide that. It's going to reflect in your
Yeah,
work and your attitude and what you do. So I love it.
absolutely. Hopefully you can
Chris,
tell that's something I like doing.
no doubt. No doubt. Thanks again, Chris. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Steve.
it. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, kiss my butt. Tell your competitors about it. They could probably use the help. Remember to fail hard, win big, and make sure you build what matters. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.